I'm Bernie Martin Beck, and I get to travel the roads of history. It's fascinating for me, but the best way I like it is not through the book, but through the person who knows the story, Grandma's story, and the story of the way it was. My guest, again, is Peggy Carpenter from out in Williams Way, Douglas County pioneers. I am so fascinated by history, so tell me what you know about this. What was it like when your family came out west in 18 and what?
40, I think it was. Oh, they took the land from the Indians like everybody else did. I'm not real happy with that one.
Well,
but
that's also part of your heritage, isn't it?
Yeah. Oh, one Indian down on the, let's see, China Creek, I think, out at Williams. My grandma had a little cabin down there, and this is way back 18-something. Anyway, she had a little cabin down there, and she had a shelf on her window to cool whatever. And she was busy in her kitchen, and she looked up and she saw a hand reach up and was going to take the pie. And she jumped and grabbed a stick of stove wood. I imagine he went around like that for the rest of his life. But, you know, somebody, well, I hate to say that, but there was an Indian who had done it. But, you know, I don't blame him a bit. I'd have swiped the white people blind myself.
Okay, Faye.
I have a real burr under my blanket where our country's concerned.
Well, you are strong woman, and I'll expect to see it written up in the newspaper in no time next time. You write regularly. What's the story about these articles you put in? Is this a paying job you do?
No.
For the love of writing you do this?
Yeah.
And have you ever thought of putting it all together in a book?
I know. A good friend of mine used to be our bookkeeper. She says, Peggy, but why don't you have it put in book form? And she says, that way I won't miss any of them. But no, I thought about it, but I don't know.
You said bookkeeper. For what business was this?
Carpenter logging.
Now the logging truck, did you drive the logging truck?
No, I've driven truck, but not the logging truck.
You are a pilot.
Yes.
You will drive across country if somebody asks.
Oh yeah.
No problem.
Well, going downhill when the lights go out, it's not a whole lot of fun. That was not a good idea. Scared the bejeepers out of me, I'll tell you.
A recent guest here on Journeys and Journals told me that during the war, they were traveling back to Crescent City, but it got dark before they could get home.
Yeah.
And you couldn't have lights on.
Yeah, and that was a windy road back then.
And they were coming up north, and Grandpa had to walk ahead and tap on the front of the car every step so they'd know where the road was.
Oh, my stars.
Did those pioneers, whether it's wartime or back when you're talking about, have guts?
Yeah, I'd say so. I don't know that I'd been real keen on coming west, you know, hearing all the wild stories that went on. I mean, I'm a tough old bird, but I don't think I'm that tough.
You are a tough old bird, but when did you start doing the writing? I mean, was it just like you wanted to be an author, or was it just, I write just like you paint?
Well, my mother was a writer.
And an educated woman.
Yeah. And she's got a book at home that she used to write for the Oregon Farmer, but she had a book on Indians and Honey Goes West, it's called. That's real interesting. Everybody's read it, said they really enjoyed it. But I just got the talent, I guess, from Mom. And then when I started aging, and my painting like this, going, oh, ow, ow, ow. You know, I thought, you know, I bet I could sit down, put my feet up, and write a whole lot easier. That's kind of what's
prompted you to move to a new career. Huh?
right.
So we left out one of your careers, and I don't know at what age you learned to fly.
Oh,
But
yeah.
you were a pilot when few women were.
Yeah, I was trying to think. It was during World War II, I was downtown, and I heard some motors, and I looked up, and two P-38s were flying right down low and right down Main Street, heading north. And man, I'll tell you, that had me hooked right there. And years later, a good friend of mine started flying, and I thought, I'm going to start flying too. So I went out to the old airport right here in town, and Fred Hale was my instructor, and he and I had a relationship kind of like Barney and I. Oh boy, yeah, he's going to, well, you're just going to sit there and plow it into the ground. And I went, acted like a brat. And I go, yeah, that's what I'm going to do. Then he took the controls, and I bet he like to backhanded me clear out the back in the airplane. But anyway, that's where I learned to fly.
Now, where all have you flown? Do you fly up north, down south, or
Well,
just for fun?
No, my son has several planes, and I've flown with him a time or two. But I never went on to get my license. There was just too much happening in my life. So
When you say too much, let's count how many children.
well, at that time I had two, but I was the go-getter for the logging outfit, and I spent 90% of my time on the highway going to Medford or Roseburg or someplace, and but a good friend of mine, he knew how much I liked Spitfires, and he found a picture of photograph frames down Southern California someplace, and he bought it and sent it to me, and I had it blown up. And now I can't find the original. It's gone. However, in my attack on my house, it may come up. It may be under the bed with the moths and the spiders. Or they may have it all chewed up. I don't know.
Because flying's always been an interest, but what about this sailboating?
Yeah, I've done a lot of that too. Yeah. The first 2 or 3 days, I think I'm going to die. Do I get seasick? Oh, man. But after 2 or 3 days, then I'm okay, and then I can eat anything and do anything, climb anything, and it doesn't bother me a bit. But I got to see a lot of the South Pacific and met the neatest people, the neatest. We went to I can't think of the island, but the biggest town on it was, we call it Pago Pago, but the chief, he came and got us and was taking us to the hotel, and something was said, and I says, well, how do you pronounce it? And he goes, Pongo Pongo, and I thought, how did he get that out of that? I mean, it's Pago Pago. And I had him repeat it 2 or 3 times, and I thought, well, Pongo Pongo. It's just like trucks pronounced chook, I guess. But anyway, the islands were, boy, I tell you, that's a good place.
And on one of these sailing trips, you got hurt.
Oh man, did I ever. I'm still carrying it. Yeah, I was sleeping in the fish trough. It's the same.
Fish trough.
Same, it's just the chief, and we're taking the boat to him. And somebody yelled and told me it was my turn to stand watch, and so I bailed out of the fish trough. And I had to jump, but I felt like 16 then. And I hit the floor, and my feet just went. I was probably that far off the floor of this deck. And I went down, and boy, I hit hard. It was a steel deck, and I mashed 3 vertebrae. And I went on. We finished the trip, and
Tough.
Like
You
I said,
called
I'm
her
a tough old bird.
Tough old bird. Well, now, when these ships, what were you doing at these boats? You were a taxi?
Well, we were taking boats. Somebody had want a boat from way down in the South Pacific, and we'd get one and take it down to them. And that's
So you're kind of like a taxi driver of boats.
yeah, pretty much.
And
One boat we had a little Aussie on it. Oh, he was a cute little fella. Yeah. Those Aussies are a lot of fun.
so whether you're driving truck, what kind of trucks were these that you drove?
Well, 18-wheelers.
Big rigs.
Yeah, they're pretty good size.
Or sailing boats, or sitting there painting, or writing those fascinating stories. And
But see, I am so full of beans that it's not hard. When you're full of beans and everything to you is a story. I mean, just like that antlion, doodlebug, whatever, that I raised, I was into that gung-ho. I had that little rascal for 2 years. I kept him fed, and one morning I went in there and there was this little round ball laying on the dirt. And I waited, and the next morning I looked, and there was a hole, and he'd crawled out, and so I put my hand in there, and he climbed up on my finger, and I took him outside, and he, love his little heart, he just, I don't know. But anyway, he stretched his wings, just like, boy, I just woke up from a nap. And then he just took off. And I cried. Oh, I didn't want to see him go, but then, that's how it is.
yeah, our kids grow up and leave
Yeah.
home.
Well, I still have the grandchildren of that one. They every year there's a new bunch come up, and
Of doodlebugs? Because he left behind, or she left behind.
yeah, she went out there probably in the woodshed because it was nice, mealy kind of dirt, and left her, and they hatched out, and they're everywhere now.
Peggy's written about doodlebugs, and Peggy's written about spiders and
Yeah.
lovely, lovely things about nature.
Well, I really can write about spiders with a lot of knowledge. My house is one big spider web. Come in, you got a duck.
What about that house? I mean, it's got its own history. Fine, fine wood it's built from.
Well, the windows came from Camp White. All the windows came from Camp White. And
Camp White was a huge city. And you've been there?
oh yeah, in fact, I went there one time with my 4-H leader, a bunch of us girls, and we had our supper there. And the prisoners, of course, they did all the cooking. And bless their little hearts, we came in and they just beamed at us and was putting stuff on our plates and talking to us, and it was neat.
Now, when you say prisoners, what prisoners are these?
Oh, the Germans. They held German prisoners over there. And as I was walking down the big wide area, I forget now what they call it, parade ground. The parade ground. The Germans, how they managed to do it, I don't think our prisoners could do it, but the Germans out there in the parade ground had on their full regalia. The whole 9 yards they had it on. And they're goose-stepping. It gives me chills to this day. Yeah, they were out there all in their finery and just a goose-stepping all over the place. Yeah.
So what they did as prisoners, if I understand you correctly, they weren't in cells or anything. They were put to work.
Oh, yeah, they worked. Yeah.
So they cooked, they helped, and...
Oh, yeah, uh-huh. Well, they liked it so much, a lot of them came back.
Oh, I wish one of them would contact us here in Better Life TV and say, let me tell my story.
Yeah.
That is, yeah.
Yeah.
I've just gotten very fascinated with the people from World War II who are willing to tell their stories.
Yeah. Yeah.
And when they tell me, I'm 90, I'm 92, I'm 94.
Yeah. Hard to believe, isn't it?
these are the times to get those stories from Grandma and Grandpa. Just ask to verbally paint a picture. Use your video camera, use your tape recorder. Get those stories, because so soon I didn't have any older people in my family to ask.
You know, my uncle was the head of the forestry department up on 12th Street. And of course, he being my mother's brother, he'd come out, you know, and visit all the time. And he would tell us all the stuff that was happening out in the mountains. Oh man, I just hung on every word. I mean, there was stuff that had been sent over with balloons, and the balloons, that didn't work, that went down, and pens.
Incendiaries.
Yeah, and there was pens. They told us, don't pick up anything. No pens, nothing, because they could be wired with explosives. So, you know, when my Uncle Johnny, he told us all these stories and saw them firsthand.
And because Deb Potts had that ring that he brought here on Better Life TV and showed and told about finding it up in a tree with half of the explosives had exploded.
Yeah.
And they were expecting that to set the trees on fire. They arrived in the rainy season.
Yeah, thank goodness.
And there it was hanging in a tree years and years later.
Yeah.
And you know, we've got stories, you've got stories that I'd like to hear, because this is the way verbal, well now Peggy, you spin some yarns, but they all have their basis in fact.
Yeah, they do.
And I love to hear your stories, so I'm going to sit back and listen.
You know, this is something that totally not connected here, but when we picked hops out there on the Applegate Road, Klutz's Hop Yard, there was an old man. To me, he was an old man. He may have been only 25, but to a little kid, he seemed old. But him sitting out there on his porch in the evenings after work was done, he'd sing songs, and one particular song, I just loved it. And you know, that's been 70 years plus, who knows how long, and I still remember the tune and the words.
Well, I don't know if you're going to sing it for us,
No,
but
I'm
you're
not.
going to say it for us.
Oh no, there'll be no sorrow in God's tomorrow. I'll be so glad when day is done. But I mean, it just goes on. It's
beautiful.
And I told the Lord, I says, Lord, I want to meet that feller.
Oh.
When we get to heaven, you bring him over to me and introduce me.
And you won't probably be this size,
No,
and he won't be that size.
But we'll both be in good shape, and he'll remember what I'm talking about.
Now, when you said you were in the same area, why was that? You had a work camp, or what was it like?
The hop yard had little cabins. All it was a room, and then a little kind of built around porch sort of a thing. And that's what we all lived in.
Now, how long would you live there?
Well, till the hops were done for the season. I don't know, 2 weeks maybe. I don't know how long it was.
And then?
Then we'd head home. Cook's Hop Yard out here on the river, they had tents.
And where did you get your food, and what kind of life did you guys live in this camp?
Oh man, it was hilariously fun. All the little kids there, why, we just got no more mischief than you shake a stick at. Yeah, it was a hoot. I really enjoyed it. Yeah.
Well, you know, Peggy, one of the reasons, folks, I wanted her to come back and tell stories was this week she told about being a little girl with 2 little friends out in Williams in the mountains, and how they entertained. Orvella Daly was one of her friends, my friend, who since passed away, and the daughter of The Daly's parents' name?
Opal and Gerald.
Opal and Gerald. Beautiful, beautiful people.
Oh, they were.
She was killed out on Highway 199, just going home from work. It's one of those sad stories, and her younger sisters became my good friends because my mother kind of spread her wings, and there was room for them under my mother's tutelage.
That was nice.
But tell me about you and Orvella. And your play places. I mean, you had fancy playhouses, right?
Oh, of course. Actually, they were the best ones around. They were up in a tree. And there wasn't any boards. We just hung over a limb. That was a good place to play. We didn't get killed either.
And if you were on the ground, how did you make your playhouses?
Well, we each had a hoe, and we'd clear out a spot. That was our house. That was my house. And then I'd make a road over to their house, and then whatever, you know. That's how we played. Over on the ridge.
On the ridge, which is?
Well, it was a little knoll between their house and our house, and it was all empty. And we got up there. I could see their house. They could see my house. It was just, you know, Mom and Dad could see us.
Now, your folks didn't worry a whole lot about you getting into trouble. You kids ran.
I spent half my time in the mountains hiking around. And looking back, I'm amazed a cougar couldn't get us, or a rattlesnake. And I remember one place up in the mountains, there was a deep, a miner had been busy and dug a, what do they call it, a shaft down the ground anyway. And I can remember the trail went right by, and I always stopped and hung over and looked. And it's a wonder I didn't fall in. It was deep.
Oh, and maybe there was gold down in that hole.
Well, I don't know about that. If there had been, I wouldn't have been interested.
Now, the CCC camp, was that near your place?
Well, about, as a crow flies, probably 2 miles, 3 miles, something like that. We spent a lot of time down there on Friday, Saturday nights going to the movies.
Now, that was fun.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. First movie I ever saw in my life was at the 3C camp.
And those guys came from?
All over the East Coast. My brother-in-law was one of them, and he came from New Jersey, Passaic, New Jersey. Yeah, he's still alive. He's down there in San Clemente.
Now, the reason that these men, young, boys?
Teenagers, yeah.
Came out to Oregon was what?
Well, I'm not sure. I don't think they were delinquents. I think there was no jobs probably. I really don't know.
Well,
but there was a whole passel of them. And I was a little girl. And I thought they were all handsome.
Eula's husband told me just today that they were up on the Umpqua where Zane Grey had his cabin. And they had a camp there. And they had to be taken from the camp to go fight the terrible fire over at Bandon. These CCC boys were making money for Mom and Dad back home. I understand $20 of their 25 went back home, and they got to keep 5.
Now, see, I got a part of that too.
What?
Well, they would go hike to the store and buy beer and go up to the Methodist church. It was vacated, had been for eons. They'd hike up to the Methodist church and sit in there on the pew seats and drink their beer and leave their bottles. And every Sunday morning, I'd get out there with a gunny sack. Oh, I'll tell you, I had ways. I didn't let any grass grow under my feet.
Oh, I'm so glad you shared that story, Peggy.
That's just what everybody needed to hear.
I love it. I love it. Because you had other ways of earning money, right?
No, gathering beer bottles and pop bottles.
I remember you telling me about knowing the difference between bad mushrooms and good mushrooms. And picking things like that. Was that for food or for fun?
No, for food. And I still go out and harvest mushrooms. So far, I haven't got one that killed me, so I guess I'm doing okay.
Oh, my goodness. I saw a morel this week.
Oh, my.
And I went, you just never know when you turn over an old board, but who's
Yeah.
underneath?
Oh, I love those things. Ooh, I love them. They're good.
I understand, just a little butter and a little
Oh.
salt, and you've got dinner.
Uh-huh. Oh, yeah.
Blackberries?
Oh, yeah, tons.
Tons?
Yeah.
Hey, your mom taught you a bunch about living off the land,
Oh,
didn't she?
absolutely. Yeah, we knew what to steer clear of and what we could eat. And the weeds out in the garden, we knew which ones we could eat and what not to eat. And
Now you folks know why I wanted Peggy back on, to tell us about some of those things that how to just live a full, abundant life without so much plastic toys and things.
I'm a unique old lady.
And how, thanks, teach us some more. Come back to Better Life TV and teach us some more. Thank you so much for being my guest,
Thank
Peggy.
you, Bernie, for having me.
I'm Bernie Martin Beck, just saying thanks for tuning in.